Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Hear Me Out, the show where we discuss hard topics from a Christian lens. I'm Chino.
And I'm Kongwa.
And we're your hosts.
Last week, we discussed how Christians should view the election. We heard from fellow students and Professor Renee DeFreitas.
If you haven't yet, hit the like button and subscribe so you guys don't miss any of our future episodes. This week, we're going viral.
That's right. We're unmasking the topic and discussing COVID-19.
So stay tuned and hear me out.
Have you ever been quarantined before?
I have. In fact, I have been quarantined before. I have. It's mentally and physically draining because all the normal things that you're used to doing, you're practically forced to not do that and stay to yourself and just stay in your room and do you.
So I haven't been quarantined while I was at school, but when everything first happened, I was kind of in quarantine for almost a month. It was okay because I have a big family, so it was really fun. My mom ordered us a pool for our backyard, so we got to just swim and hang out with each other, but then they kind of drove me crazy. So it was hard towards the end, but it was really nice because I wasn't alone. I had my siblings and my parents.
What do you think about this whole entire mask thing? Now that you're out and about, having to see only half of people's faces, what do you think about masks, just in general?
It's not my favorite thing in the world, but I see the value in it.
I mean, they help the economy stay safe, I'm guessing. But then again, there's also some masks that don't really provide help like they should. So I'm kind of iffy on it.
Are we overreacting or are we underreacting about this?
Honestly, I think we're underreacting because COVID is a real thing and people think that it's not, and people are dying still. People are in hospitals. Even young kids like us are still in hospitals. And so I think we need to be more cautious on what we do and where we are with people. And of course, with temperature checks, it needs to be consistent because, even if it's not temperature, it's going to be something else because you really never know.
Honestly, I feel like you can't just shut down the world and not do life. So I feel like the way that we can do life is through wearing masks. So I think continuing that is a good thing.
I was exposed to COVID, but in actuality, I think that it is necessary because it is a great precaution to be quarantined so that you won't have the influence of spreading it even more.
So we have heard about what your peers have to say about quarantine, COVID, and masks. Let's go ahead and continue this conversation back at the studio.
Since COVID has become commonplace during the fall 2020 semester, one of the most affected aspects of life at SAGU has been athletics. Our Hear Me Out reporter James Landers has a story on how a few football players are coping.
Back in March, SAGU followed the rest of the country into online isolation. Life as normal became a thing of the past. 8 months later, students are coming to the end of a full semester back on campus. Hustle has returned to the halls, labs are full of clicking, and the caf resounds with chatter. Yet COVID lurks in protocol. Athletic events are being canceled left and right. Has life really returned to normal, or does COVID keep us captive even now?
I feel like when we got here, it was very strict, and there was a middle section where it wasn't as strict because everyone thought it was fine, and then we started getting cases, and became very strict again, if not more strict than the beginning.
COVID has made my life more difficult as an athlete because we have so many protocols we have to follow, from wearing a mask to temperature checks to reporting our daily symptoms if we have any.
If that's the case, where does the real issue lie? Man versus disease or man versus authority? SAGU has drawn very specific lines for the global pandemic.
I understand why they're doing it, but I think they could have a little bit more gentle approach about it. Like have a little bit more thought about the person's symptoms rather than, oh, you're coughing, go home.
I feel like SAGU is taking the right approach, as in there's nothing else they can really do.
Students on both sides of the mask agree on one thing: a normal future is not on the line with COVID.
It's just a now thing. I don't think this virus is going to last 5-6 years from now. It's not affecting my future directly. It's affecting what's in the moment, more or less a month, 2 months, or a year from now.
Welcome back. Today we have a special guest with us, Stephen Farina, who's a student here at SAGU, and Gotham Buddharaju, who's a recent grad from UT. They're going to be discussing their views on COVID-19 in our world today. So let's get started. Gotham, I'll ask you first. Do you think that local and national authorities have done a good job with handling the COVID-19 pandemic?
Overall, I would say local governments, it varies from state to state and from city to city. Some states like New York and New Jersey handled the first spike of the coronavirus okay, whereas plenty of states handled it very poorly. As an entire entity, the federal government, I would say, handled it very, very poorly. In pretty much every metric that is that's valuable to like experts. So one of these would be testing. The U.S. very much, as a federal government, as a federal entity, dragged their feet in testing. Even right now, we are not even in the top 10 for tests per capita, despite having a huge amount of cases and a recent case surge in most states. Masks in general were not incentivized to be worn, and members of our government have spoken against mask wearing, or at least have alluded to the fact that they're not helpful. Trump himself said in April, it's voluntary, you don't have to do it, and I don't think I'm going to do it, which sets an example for citizens that is generally not conducive towards wearing masks in general.
Yeah.
One more thing is that we just don't have enough of a grasp on locking down in general. There aren't federal guidelines for locking down and how to do it, even in local communities, which is kind of really bad in general. So in combination of all these things, the U.S. has done, in pretty much every reasonable and usable metric, done a really, really bad job of handling the pandemic.
Thank you. Stephen, what are your thoughts?
I mean, as far as what I've seen locally, I haven't seen as much. I think they've done it well locally. I haven't seen as outbursts or people hey, you're not wearing a mask or anything like that. And putting up signs, I think people were kind of oh, this is mandatory to wear a mask. But I think I've seen people putting masks on more gradually. As far as governmental wise, I'm not entirely too sure, but I do know that compared to the last pandemic, roughly 2008, 2009, the H1N1, they have reacted faster compared to that virus.
Yeah. So the next question is for you, Stephen. What COVID mandates, if any, do you think were a good rule to put in place when the pandemic hit, and which ones do you think were a bit too extreme?
I think total lockdown may have been too extreme. I think they probably could have pushed wearing a mask a lot sooner, and I know some people are probably really against that, but definitely the lockdown really probably got people just wound up, and we're not doing that.
Yeah. So the next question is for you, Gotham, and it's kind of about lockdowns. It's how effective do you think the localized lockdowns were, and do you think they lasted too long or not long enough?
Local lockdowns are absolutely necessary in any pandemic response. Even if you look historically at the 1918 Spanish flu, they help local communities figure out how to deal with it on the community level and address the community concerns. However, I think that the way that local mandates were done and local lockdowns were done was pretty bad because there were not enough metrics and not enough guidelines for when and how to shut down. in general. So a lot of these places didn't target places with high community spread and didn't end up focusing on things that needed to be done in order to reduce spread. In addition to that, I would also say that lockdowns are not really the only thing that can be done to reduce the spread of a disease. If you look at other countries that were successful, like Taiwan, South Korea, and Vietnam, those countries implemented a variety of things, including mandatory mask wearing, localized shutdowns, federal shutdowns, and even like checking people when they enter as tourists or coming in on planes and stuff like that. So, and of course, mass testing. The US as a whole, and even most local governments that tried to implement a shutdown, didn't follow any kind of metric or guideline for doing so. And in doing that, we currently have a huge spike in cases with recently 100,000 people in a single day had a confirmed case of coronavirus. And I think this is a failure overall in ensuring public health safety.
Yeah. Thank you. So we've got a video coming up, and it goes with the next question. So let's view that video now. Be advised, it might gross a few people out. This video shows a person saying the numbers 1, 2, 3 in super slow motion. And it shows how the moisture droplets escape the mouth while talking. So how does seeing the video affect your viewpoints on mask wearing, Gotham?
So I think this just reinforces what I was saying before of the absolute necessity to wear a mask. So when viewing this video, you can see the amount of droplets that are leaving someone's mouth even during normal conversation. And as we know, COVID-19 is spread largely through aerosolized like droplets, and that causes really high levels of infection. Wearing a mask is not a 100% guaranteed thing that you won't get the virus, but it's a huge measure that can help in reducing community and group transmission. And of course, as I said before, countries that implemented strategies to increase mask wearing, like Korea, Japan, and Vietnam, had significantly lower levels of COVID transmission in their communities.
Steven, what do you think?
It doesn't really change that much for me as far as wearing it or not wearing it. I was watching the video, and I know it's like slow motion. I know you see a lot more in slow motion, but it looked a little suspicious to me as like his mouth was closed and there was a big spurt that came out. So I would have to see that test like for myself from beginning to end and how they set everything up and maybe different angles. And then it doesn't look like, even if it was real, as they say, it doesn't look like it's going out very far. So I think if I social distance, then if I choose not to wear a mask, then I should have that right.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you guys very much. We're so thankful that you guys came on the show. You guys had some awesome perspectives on this topic and some great information. And you guys have offered some really, really good insights. Well, we're going to step away and take a short break, but we'll be back soon.
And now it's time for Dumb Debates with Tim, the part of the show where Tim has a dumb debate. So without further ado, Dumb Debates with Tim.
So, as y'all both know, I'm a gardener. So I was in my garden.
Of course.
And, I was getting my fruits, I was getting my veggies. And, I got to the tomatoes, right? And I was like, is this a veggie or is this a fruit? Because I don't know.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking y'all.
Yeah.
It's a great question, but I think the answer is pretty obvious.
Really? What do you think?
I was kind of clueless, so I was.
Well, where was it in your garden?
Yeah. Like, was it in the veggie section? Was it in the fruit section? Was it by some strawberries?
It was definitely in the veggie section of my garden.
Okay.
It's definitely a vegetable.
Well, I'd have to beg to differ on that one. I think it's a fruit.
Oh.
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 Yeah.
Why do you think it's a fruit?
Well, it has seeds. Vegetables don't have seeds.
Oh, that's kind of facts.
That's true. I'm going to give you that. Scientifically, it could be a fruit, but like a banana scientifically is a berry. So I'm going to have to go with, what is it used for?
Oh.
Okay, well, how about this? Vegetables are grown underground. Fruits bloom from flowers, little flower buds. And tomatoes come from flower buds.
That
But
is
potatoes
true.
don't. Potatoes are underground. So a potato is a
true.
vegetable, a tomato is a fruit.
That is
That's
true.
true. But like I said, what is it used for? Like, I'm not gonna sit here and put a tomato in my fruit salad. That's kind of gross.
Why not?
That's gross.
No.
I'm not
That
gonna
is kinda
put
gross.
tomato
Yeah,
up
that
in
is-
some yogurt or something. No,
yum.
I'm gonna use tomato on like a fresh hamburger or something with
Oh.
lettuce, a vegetable,
Ooh.
Ooh.
right?
Ooh.
Okay.
But if you were to consider a tomato as a fruit, then you could go as far as saying that ketchup is a smoothie.
You could say that.
You could.
And
Are you
that's
gonna
a-
drink ketchup?
I mean,
I
if
mean,
it's
no, but you could
Whataburger
s-
ketchup, then
That spicy ketchup, you hit
that
it different.
spicy ketchup is
I mean,
different.
I'm gonna not pick up any of your cups from now on.
Okay. Good,
That's
because
fair.
COVID, so
Oh,
you
yeah.
wouldn't want to do that.
So we have to agree right now.
Okay.
Is it a vegetable or is it a fruit?
It's definitely
Fruit.
a vegetable.
Uh-oh. Sounds like we don't have a clear conclusion here, but
Yikes.
we can leave it up to our viewers. They can go down and comment what they think, whether a tomato is technically a vegetable or a fruit. So go comment, and back to Chino.
Welcome back, everyone. If tomato's a fruit, then doesn't that make ketchup a smoothie? I don't know. Let's get back on track with some positivity with the prof.
This week, we have Professor Matt Good presenting a Christian perspective of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Hey guys, I can't tell you how grateful I am to be able to sit in this episode and kind of share a little bit about COVID-19 and my own personal story. I think I have a unique perspective when it comes to COVID-19. I guess I'm not old, but I'm not young, so I'm kind of in that middle age category. And so when the whole COVID-19 pandemic hit our nation and in the world, I thought, you know what, if I do get it, at least I'd get it now while, I'm, and not while I'm, 70 or 80 years old, and I'll have a better chance of surviving if I do get it. I would wear my mask, I washed my hands, I socially distanced. So I really wasn't thinking I was gonna ever get COVID-19, but that was not the case. A week into the semester, I was exposed somehow, even though I wore a mask, even though I washed my hands, even though I socially distanced. And the next couple weeks, it was a real battle. It felt like, just the worst flu I've ever had. I had tingling sensations up and down my body, felt like pins and needles. I had a bad cough, a sore throat, and bad headaches, and I began to lose taste and smell. And those are just some of those symptoms that that identify with COVID-19 patients. Luckily, my lungs never got really bad. I wasn't hospitalized. But after that first week of having all these symptoms, most of them went away. And I just had a bunch of brain fog after that and overall exhaustion for another week. It was a crazy couple weeks. For whatever reason, even though I was around my wife and around my kids, they did not have symptoms like I did at all. So they were tested and tested negative. So I think it's one of those deals where when we think about a pandemic like this, we think about this type of disease. We really don't know who is going to get it, what their symptoms might be like, and how severe their symptoms would be. My wife's uncle was in the hospital for a few weeks with a ventilator. They didn't think he was going to live. And here's what we saw. We saw the church come around him. We saw them interceding, praying for him, having special services of worship and just intercession for him. And we see this all over the world, this happening to some people who are hospitalized. And I saw God work a miracle in his life, and he's now out of the hospital, totally off the ventilation, and recovering. And I believe that there's just a renewed sense of God's purpose in his life. And we can just give God the praise and the victory for that. I think here's what I would have to say about what a Christian's response would be to COVID-19. When we look at Matthew 22, we see that Jesus, he's talking to the Pharisees, and he is saying, you know what, the greatest commandment is for us to love the Lord our God with all of our hearts, minds, and strength. And here's the deal. He follows that up with the second greatest commandment, and that is to love your neighbor as yourself. And so I began thinking about, how do I love myself? And I love myself by trying to take care of my body, by not getting sick, by trying to avoid any type of pain and any type of suffering. But when Jesus says to love our neighbors as ourselves, I have to think about, okay, how am I helping other people to avoid sickness, to avoid pain, to avoid, even death? And so when I think about wearing a little mask and socially distancing and making sure that, I wash my hands, things like that, that's just a small way for me to love my neighbor. A lot of us, we have elderly parents or grandparents who can fall victim to something like COVID-19 and become hospitalized and become, really on their deathbed or even die. I believe that everybody that, we run across, even on this campus, we know somebody who's been just drastically affected by this pandemic. And so I think that if we are truly to love our neighbors as ourselves, we need to think about that. And we need to do whatever we can in order to help protect the most vulnerable. And if that means to wear our masks, then that's what we need to do. And I've been very encouraged on this campus at SAGU. I haven't seen any complaints or heard any complaints of students not wanting to wear their masks in class. I've seen people socially distanced. I believe that even the response and the wisdom of our leadership and how we have put together a system in order to combat the spread of this disease has just been great. And I believe that, as we look to the future, we know that Jesus in John, he talks about, how we are going to have trials, we're going to have tribulations, we're going to have trouble in this world. But he says this, he tells us all these things about his life so that we'd have peace in life because he has overcome the world. And I think that that's what we need to do. We need to find that peace of Jesus, knowing that he has overcome the world. So we don't need to be afraid of this. We need to continue to love God with all of our hearts, minds, and souls. And we need to love our neighbors as ourselves.
Wow. Mr. Good, thank you so much for that amazing perspective.
And thank you all for watching our show this week.
So if you haven't already, like and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes.
And feel free to check out our past episodes too. Guys, please stay safe out there and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
You want to go get a smoothie?
Oh, yeah.
All right, I want to go get a smoothie.